Hi. Thank you. Hi. Well, I was born completely colorblind, so I've never seen a color. And as a child, it was a bit strange because everyone kept talking about colors. So even if you don't see color, it's difficult to ignore that color exists because people keep mentioning color names, and they kept mentioning it every day of my life, like daily elements like yellow pages or Bluetooth or Greenpeace or Red Cross or a Pink Panther, blue tack. There's so many things. James Brown is in his last name. Or this huge country called Greenland. So color kept popping up every single day, and I couldn't ignore the existence of color. Also, when you use color as a code, it can be a bit confusing, like hot water, cold water, or in maps. So this is fine, but if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost because some maps only use color codes. Also, when I was learning the colors of flags, I had this situation. So they share exactly the same flag. So it was a bit confusing. Also, if someone would ask me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink? I would have absolutely no idea, because the only information I get here is that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked, basically. So the reason why I wanted to sense color was not because I wanted to sense the beauty of color, but because there was this social element that I couldn't sense. I didn't want to change my sight, because to me, seeing in grayscale is fine. I see better at night, for example. So people who see in grayscale, we have better night vision. Also, we see longer distances, and we also memorize shapes more easily because the color doesn't distract us. Also, camouflages less problematic because we see the shape more easily. And also, photocopies are cheaper in black and white. So this was always an advantage in my life. So I wanted to have a sense of color, and then I was a musician. I was studying music, and I realized that there's been many theories relating color and sound. So I was really interested in, like this is Newton's theory, and there's been many more theories after him relating colors and sound. So color is a light frequency, sound is an audio frequency. So they both have something in common, that they're frequencies. So we started a project with the aim of creating a way of hearing the frequencies of color. So if we could hear the frequency of red, we would hear a specific note. Like red is 420 millions of light waves per second. So if we could hear that wave, we would hear a specific note. So we created a software that slows down the frequencies of light until you can hear the notes of color. And then once we created the software, I memorized the names, or the notes and the names that you give to each color. So red had a specific frequency, so then I memorized that that was red, and each color would have its own note. And I used headphones and a 5-kilo computer in 2003, 4, and then a webcam that picked up the colors around me and allowed me to hear the color in front of me. So I slowly memorized the names of the notes of colors, and then after some time, I was able to memorize 360 different microtones for each degree of the color wheel, and each color has its own sine wave. So this one has audio, yeah. So now you're hearing frequencies from red to orange. So it's very slight, subtle changes. So at the beginning, it was a bit chaotic because there's color everywhere. So it was like hearing electronic music everywhere, but slowly the brain got used to it and it became a sense. It became normal until it became, I started having favorite colors and colors that I didn't like so much because of the sound that they created. So these are the hue of colors, and then we added different volume levels for saturation levels. So if a color is very saturated, I hear it louder, and if it's less saturated, I hear it softer. And after a while, I was able to distinguish all visual colors through sound, so I didn't see why I should stop there. There's many more colors that exist, but the human eye cannot sense, like infrareds and ultraviolets. So in 2008, I decided to extend my color perception beyond the visual spectrum. So since then, I can perceive more colors than the human eye, like infrareds and ultraviolets. Infrareds are interesting because I can tell if the movement detectors in a room are on or off. So this is usually used for alarms. So I can tell if a shop has the alarms on or off, or if a bank has them on or off. And in many cases, they're off. So it's interesting to detect this. Also, Ultraviolet allows me to tell if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. So if I sense there's a high level of ultraviolet, then I just avoid the sun or I put some extra sun cream. So my aim is to continuously extend my perception of color beyond these limitations, and technology can allow me to do that. So the older I get, the more colors I'll be able to perceive. So I didn't want to use technology, and I didn't want to wear technology. I wanted to become technology. So I wanted to create a new body part. I didn't want to have something wearable. So first I thought of having a third eye implanted in my head, so I would have an eye for color. But this would limit my perception of color to only what I would have in front of me. So I thought that maybe I should create a new body part, and then I looked at nature and I saw that there's many insects and animals that have antennas. So I thought maybe the best thing would be to create a human antenna that would allow me to sense color through an independent organ, because I didn't want to use my ears and I didn't want to use my eyes to sense color. I wanted to have an independent sense for color. So the aim was to create a new sensory organ, and I thought of an antenna. So I looked at nature. There's many different types of antenna, but I thought that maybe the cetaceous type of antenna would be the best, because then it would allow me to sense colors 360 degrees. So I could be looking at you, but I could be sensing the colors behind me or the colors in the ceiling. So it would be giving me 360 degrees. So I went to the doctor and I said I wanted an antenna implant. And then he said, sorry, we don't do this here. If you want an antenna implanted, you'll have to either explain what you want. And then he said that new surgeries need to go through bioethical committees. So I presented the surgery to a bioethical committee, saying that it would be an antenna implanted in my head, and then it would allow me to perceive color through vibrations inside the bone. So if you have a chip in the bone that vibrates depending on the light frequencies, these vibrations inside the bone would become inner sounds. So that was the aim. And also it would be inside the bone, so it would be part of my skeleton. They said no. In the end, they said this is not ethical. They were not happy about the fact that it would go beyond the visual spectrum, because they said that they would only be accepting regenerating pre-existing senses. So this is not the recreation of a pre-existing sense, but the creation of a new one. Also, they were not happy about a new body part, because usually what they do is recreate pre-existing body parts. So these are the two reasons that they didn't like it. And the third one was that they were really worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they told me that you would have to find someone to do it anonymously, a doctor that would be willing to do it without saying who he is. So I found one, and then we did the surgery. This is my head facing down. We removed some hair, and then we reduced the skin, and then my head was drilled 4 times, so we would have 4 different implants. One is the chip that vibrates inside my bone. 2 other ones are the structure of the antenna, and we decided to add the 4th implant for internet connection, so that I can also receive colors from external devices, not only from the antenna. So this was all placed inside, and then it was closed, and it took 2 months for the antenna to merge with my head. So now this is officially part of my skeleton, so I'm officially taller as well, because this is part of my body. And also my internet connection now allows me to receive colors from other people. So I have 5 people in the world with permission to send colors to my head. They can use their mobile phone, and then they can stream live images. So if there's a sunset in Australia, my friend from Melbourne can just stream the images from the sunset to my head live. So I could be here, but I could suddenly be sensing the colors from Australia. Or if they send colors at night, then they can actually either wake me up or they can color my dreams. So if someone starts sending blue colors and I'm asleep, my dream suddenly becomes blue, or I'm suddenly in the sea, or I'm looking at the sky. So they can actually influence my dreams by sending colors at night. So this, I see it as the use of the internet as a sense or a sensory extension, and I think it's something that we'll start seeing a lot in the 2020s, how we stop using the internet so much as a tool, and we start using it in a way to extend our senses or to create new senses as internet as a sense. This is an MRI of my brain. So the constant use of cybernetics has created a new sense, which is that not only color is sound, but also sound is color. If I hear music, each note that I hear also, to me, feels like different colors. When I started feeling this union between cybernetics and my brain is when I felt cyborg, which is a word that defines itself. Cyborg means cybernetic organism. So I identify myself as a cyborg because I'm physically and biologically united to cybernetics, and also because I'm psychologically united to cybernetics. So I identify as a cyborg. And this was something I had to explain in 2004 to the UK government, because I had to renew my passport, and they said that there was a problem with the picture, because they said there was something electronic on the picture. And there's this law that says electronic equipment is not allowed on passport photos. So I replied saying that this was not an electronic equipment, but a new body part. And I told them that I identified as being technology, that I identified as a cyborg, and they replied saying no again. So it became like a small battle with the UK passport office, trying to convince them that they should allow me to define myself as a cyborg and that they should see this as a body part. In the end, they got tired. They said yes, and then they allowed me to appear with the first prototype in 2004, and then I've been renovating the picture whenever the antenna has been modified. So this allows me to travel more freely, because in airports, they don't usually like technology, so I usually have problems with it, but with the passport, they have to allow me through. Now, I'm in conversations with the Swedish government, because the material I used to create the antenna is Swedish, so I'm telling them that I am Swedish, because part of my body is Swedish. So I'm trying to apply for Swedish citizenship, but the law now says that if you want to apply for Swedish citizenship, you need to have one of these points. So I think there's a point missing here, that if you have, it should say that if you have a Swedish body part, you're also entitled to apply for Swedish citizenship. So I'm in conversations with them, and maybe they'll say yes, or maybe they'll say no. If they say no, they'll have to explain why. And I think we should be allowed. If you have a Chinese heart, for example, transplant, and you feel that you feel Chinese, maybe after a period of time, you should be entitled to also apply for Chinese citizenship. So I think maybe there'll be a time when each country will have their own laws, and maybe if for 7 years you have a British body part, then you can apply for British citizenship. So I think there might be a point when each country will decide how long you need to have a body part for. So my life has changed in many different ways. Before I would dress in a way that it would look good, but now since I hear colors, I can dress in a way that it sounds good. So I can decide which notes I want to wear. Like this would be a C major combination, so that would be a happy occasion because it sounds a major chord, it's C, E, and G. This would be a minor chord, so I would dress like this in a funeral, for example, because it's very sad chord. Or also you can dress as a melody, so I can design songs, so I can wear specific songs that I might like. Like this is electronic music that I really like, so I transposed it to color and then into a tie. So when I wear the tie, I can listen to the music by scanning it with my antenna. So the longer the tie, the longer the melody, so you can decide how long you want it. Also, the way I see interior designs has changed, because if I want the house to sound good, I would change the colors of it. Like living rooms would be pink, blue, and yellow, because it would give a major chord to the living room. Also, the floors would be red. Red is the lowest frequency, so it gives a profound sound to the whole house. So it's a very nice sound to have it at the ceiling, at the floor. Ceilings would be black and white, because black and white is silent. So if you lie down, then it creates silence. Exit doors would be green, because green is in the middle of the spectrum, so it's like tuning yourself before you go out in the street. And then the kitchens would be violet, because violet is the highest frequency, so it gives a very high tone, and it keeps you alert. It's also a color that we don't usually eat, so it doesn't interfere with food. Food has changed a lot as well, because when I eat, I can also hear the food. So I really enjoy listening to salads, because salads have many different notes. And depending on how I put the food on the plate, I can then create melodies, so I can eat songs. And I really enjoy just composing music with food. And I'm collaborating with a restaurant in Barcelona where people will be able to go there and ask for a song, and then it will be served on a plate that will rotate. And then there's a chip that allows you to hear the sound of the food. So you can ask for some Mozart or some Björk if you want some. I guess if you maybe like some Icelandic music for a main dish, and then some maybe Lady Gaga dessert or something. So you can decide the songs you want to eat. So now I can actually compose music only by looking at things. I don't need to play an instrument anymore. I can just look at different objects, and then depending on how I move my antenna, I can create melodies. Yeah, it doesn't play, but it's you can find different melodies online. Also, my experience of listening to an art has changed, so now I can listen to a Picasso or an Andy Warhol, because all painters have become composers, and it's changed the way I experience art galleries. Also, when I look at you or I look at anyone's face, I can hear the colors of the face. So each face sounds different, and I really enjoy, instead of drawing someone's face, I get close and then I write down the sound of the eyes, the lips, the hair, and the skin, and then I send an MP3 of their face so that they can listen to themselves. So one of the first ones I did was of Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him. Each person sounds different. So Judi Dench has silent hair because it's very white. James Cameron has a very high-pitched sound of skin. Al Gore has different notes in his eyes because it's different shades of turquoise. Steve Reich has a melody in his eyes because he has a pattern of colors, so you can hear music by just looking at his eyes, whereas Steve Bosse has eyes that sound like green apples. Moby has one note less. He has no hair, so it's one note less, so he sounds less than other people. Robert De Niro, very, very high-pitched lips, whereas Woody Allen sounds very soft. Philip Glass, very microtonal, and Bono had very loud glasses here. So each person has its own chord and its own sound. What really shocked me through the years is the people who say they're black, they're not black, and people who say they're white, they're not white. People who say they're black, they're very, very dark orange, and people who say they're white, they're very, very light orange as well. So the fact that people say that we are black and white is completely false. We are all different shades of orange. One of the things of hearing faces is that you can also create phased concerts. So you can, like usually it's the audience that cues, and then I start creating melodies with the people's faces. So I create rhythms with pedals, and then the concert is based on the colors of the audience. So if the concert sounds really bad, it's their fault, because that's where the music is coming from. The last face concert was of Prince Albert II of Monaco, and he liked the sound of his face so much that he's using it as his ringtone, so whenever someone calls him, he hears his face. So we didn't know what would happen with this project when we started in 2003. We had no idea if it would have any secondary effects, and it has had a secondary effect, which is that when I hear sounds, I also feel colors, which is this was not planned. So when I listen to the phone line, I sense it green. Most phone lines are A in the note, so this is, for me, phone lines are green. But it happens with music as well, so when I hear music, each note is color, so I can now paint what I hear. This is Mozart's Queen of the Night, transposed into color, note by note. So I start in the middle and then I end there. This is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber. So it looks very different from Mozart, but it's the same system. So note by note from the center out, and then you can visualize the frequencies of the music. Also, speeches can be transposed into color, because when we speak, we use different frequencies that relate to different colors. So this is a speech by Martin Luther King, and that's a speech by Hitler. So it looks very different because they use very different types of frequencies. Also, you can create music into makeup, so you can wear different notes on your face. These are just some anthems, national anthems transposed into makeup. Or also you can create color concerts where the musicians learn the color codes, and then the score is projected by color. So they don't have score in front, they use the color projections. Also street sculptures where you can have a melody on the top, and then with an app, you can download the app, and then you can hear the colors through the mobile phone. And also at night, the projection changes, and then you can hear music through the mobile phone, through the color. So these new sense, I use it also to express myself artistically, and then trying to share the experience of hearing or perceiving color in such a way. So I've had an antenna in my head now for almost 14 years or 13 years, and it's also been a social experiment, because people stop me in the street asking what this antenna is. And I've had people asking it for every single day for many, many years. And it's interesting to see how it's changed through the years. What people think it is has changed. In 2004, most people thought it was a reading light. So they would ask me if I could turn on the light, or they would ask me, why do you have a reading light in your head? Then in 2005, 6, people would think it's a microphone like this. They thought it was a microphone like an internet chat. In 2007, 8, they thought it was a hands-free telephone. There was a lot of taxi drivers that had a hands-free telephone, so they thought it was something to do with telephones. In 2009, people thought it was a GoPro cam, that I was filming myself, that I was filming my life. In 2011, 12, many people thought it was something to do with Google Glass, that it was going to be something to do with Google. In 2014, 15, many children would ask if it was some kind of extendable selfie stick, or something. And since last year, people just shout Pokemon at me. So it keeps changing. I just hope that in the 2020s, people will just think it's an antenna or a new body part or a new sensory organ, and that it allows me to extend my senses. I'm pretty sure there'll be more people with new organs and new senses soon, because now we can actually use technology to extend our senses, not only to extend our intelligence, but I think we'll see a lot of AS, artificial senses, and also AI, artificial intelligence, but we'll start seeing more of AS, more artificial senses. In 2010, I created the Cyborg Foundation with Moon Rivas. In order to help other people become cyborgs, I realized that there was many more people interested in extending their senses. So what we do is different projects, like this was one with a pair of earrings that allow you to sense if there's movement in front of you. So with your eyes shut, you can feel if someone's walking in front of you, but then you have two. So depending on the interval, you can slowly learn how fast someone's walking. So you become a speed radar, and you can slowly learn how fast someone's walking. Also, if you turn them around, you can then perceive if someone's walking behind you. So it gives you retroception, something that a sense that we give to machines or to cars. We can also have it ourselves if we have some earrings that vibrate if there's presence behind you. Moon Rivas, the co-founder of the Cyborg Foundation, has 2 implants in her body that allow her to feel the seismic activity of the world. So whenever there's an earthquake in the world, her body vibrates. So now she's in New York, but if there's an earthquake in Japan, she will feel it in her body. She feels from 1 in the Richter scale, so she feels earthquakes every 10 minutes. And at the beginning, it was a bit unusual for her, but then slowly she got used to this, and she now feels it as a second heartbeat. She feels that she has her own heartbeat and then the earth beat, and she feels the movement of the earth constantly. And then this also, she uses it artistically to express herself through dance. So one of her pieces is Waiting for Earthquakes, where she only dances whenever she feels an earthquake. So Earth is the choreographer of her dances, and if there's no earthquakes during the performance, then there's no dance, basically. But usually there are. So also now she has a new implant that will allow her to sense moonquakes. There's also a seismograph on the moon. So whenever there's a moonquake, she will also feel a vibration in her body. I also use the internet to connect to space. So my internet connection not only allows me to receive colors from other people, but also to connect to NASA's International Space Station. So that allows me to then have my sense of color outside this planet. So it allows me to explore space while being here. And both Moon and I think that this could be a new form of exploration. Instead of physically going to space, we can just send our senses to space and explore it while we are home. So this would be like becoming sensastronauts or mindstronauts, while we can lie in bed but have our senses in space. Also in the future, when we can 3D print ourselves, if we have DNA 3D printers, we'll be able to send these printers to different planets or in Mars, and then we'll be able to 3D print ourselves in Mars and then use the internet as a way to connect to our second body so that we can be in Mars while we are here. And that's probably a much more comfortable way of exploring space, by having second bodies and using the internet as a sensory extension. For me, connecting to space is something that it needs practice. I'm only connecting 2 or 3 hours a day now, but my aim is to have a permanent connection. Last year we started Cyborg Dance, which is a company that actually also offers senses to people, so people can actually buy a sense and then have it implanted or placed in the body. This is one of the senses we are offering is the North Sense, which is a chip that allows you to feel where the north is. It can be placed in the center of your body. So whenever you face north, you feel a vibration. At the beginning, it can be a bit overwhelming because you will hear vibrations a lot whenever you face north. But in theory, it will slowly become subliminal, and then you will gain a sense of orientation. There's many animals that have this sense, that they can feel the magnetic north. So we think that this might actually awake a dormant sense that we all probably have, but we are not using. Also, we think that we can learn a lot from senses that already exist, like this one, the north, but we all find that becoming a cyborg is something very natural. We don't think that becoming a cyborg is something that gets or brings us closer to technology, but the opposite. It brings us closer to other animals. In my case, I feel now much closer to animals that can sense infrared and ultraviolet. So if I see my cat, for example, staring at the wall, and I sense that there's infrared on the wall, I know that my cat is probably staring at the infrared, not at the wall. Or also with ultraviolet, if I see many insects going to a specific flower and I sense there's a high level of ultraviolet, I know that they're going there because of the ultraviolet. So it connects me to species that it didn't before. Also, having an antenna connects me with insects that have an antenna. I feel closer to them because I share a body part with them. Also, sensing through bone conduction is something that dolphins do, so I also find a connection with dolphins now. So we think that adding senses that other species have will actually bring us closer to them, we'll feel more connected to them, and also more connected to nature. I think we are all trans species. We've not been human all our lives. We've been evolving as a species. We probably first were like bacteria in the ocean, and we've been evolving. And now we are in a stage that we can actually decide what species we want to be. So we can all decide what senses and what organs we want to have. And that's something that will completely change our species during this century. We'll see people with new organs and new senses slowly becoming more and more normal. And there'll be a point when we'll be able to not use technology anymore, but 3D print an antenna, for example, with my own DNA. So this would be 100% organic, and I'll be able to add infrared and ultraviolet perception by simply genetically modifying my genes. So this is slowly going to happen during this century, and then will be a point when new children will be born with new senses and new organs. So I think it's a very interesting stage of our life because we are witnessing a renaissance of our species. We are witnessing this shift where we can actually become whoever we want. We can actually decide what senses and organs we want to have, and I think we can learn a lot from other species. If we had night vision, for example, it would be beneficial for our planet. We wouldn't be using artificial light anymore, so we wouldn't have light in cities. We would all cities would be dark. We would have night vision, so it would be very beneficial for our planet if we didn't have to create all this artificial light. So I think the more we design ourselves, the less we'll have to design the planet. So we'll be respecting much more the environment if instead of changing the environment to survive, we change ourselves in order to survive. One of the projects I've been doing lately, last year, was I have a tooth missing, and I didn't want to have a normal tooth placed, so we created the tooth with a small light, so in case of total darkness or emergency, I can just click and then I have internal light. So in case that you have some teeth missing, instead of having it replaced with a normal one, we could all have a small LED inside your tooth so that you can have bioluminescence. This is also something that many species can create. In case of total darkness, they can create light. So this is something that it can be very useful. During our life, last year or so, Moon had the tooth missing, so we decided to then create another project where it would be creating a way of communicating from tooth to tooth. So we decided, we created a tooth. It was placed in my mouth that whenever I click, Moon receives a vibration in her mouth. She also had one placed. And if she clicks, I receive a vibration in my mouth. So we both know Morse code. So if I click in a specific pattern, she will understand what I'm saying. So it's a way of communicating from tooth to tooth that we demonstrated in Sao Paulo in Brazil last year. This was a case where the people were giving me a word, and then I was sending it to Moon, and Moon was telling what word it was. So we were communicating. We called it transdental communication system. And it's actually used through Bluetooth. So it's a Bluetooth tooth that allows you to communicate. Basically, this could be useful in space, because in space there's no air conduction, so this would allow you to communicate in space, also under the water. So it could be useful also if you are completely paralyzed, but you can move your mouth. You could also communicate from your mouth to a computer that translates Morse code into speech. So you could also use it in different ways. Now, just to end, my next project this year is I'm going to add a new sensory organ, because I've had this one for 12 years, so I'm going to add a new one around my head. I've been always interested in time, so I'm creating a sensory organ for the sense of time. We all have a sense of time, but we don't have a sensory organ for time. There's no species that has an organ for time. So I'm creating this, it will be a crown inside the skin, circular, and then it will give heat. And the heat will go around the head slowly. It will take 24 hours for the heat to go around the head. So automatically I will know what time it is by feeling the heat around my head. But then the question is whether or not if I have this for several months or years, it should slowly become subliminal, so I won't feel the heat anymore, but I'll know what time it is. And whenever this happens, I should be able to modify my perception of time. So if I'll have a controller, so if I want time to go slower, I can make this heat go a bit slower, and then in theory, I will feel that time is going slower. Or if I want time to go faster, I can move it a bit faster. Or if I'm on a plane, I could put it on plane mode, and then I can travel at the same speed as the plane, so I would have less jet lag, in theory. Or if I just want to travel in time, I can just make it spin twice, so I feel that I'm traveling in time. So it's basically, if time perception is based on our own perception, if we have an organ for time, in theory, you should be able to modify your perception of time. So it's basically taking Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice, and this is something I'm going to do this year. So I'll see how it works. This is it. I hope we all start basically looking at technology in a way that brings us closer to nature. This is at least our aim. Also, that brings us closer to other species, and that by modifying ourselves, it can be beneficial for our planet and for other species. Thank you very much. Thank you.